What now would a scientist have to say about this? Well, I'm no scientist, but it's obvious to me that this is a flying saucer. And cup, of course.
Well, what about flying saucers? I don't know much about them myself, but then I'm not an astronomer. So I have not had the privilege, when they were in fashion some years ago, to get in my morning mail urgent letters from people who had seen several the night before, and reported them to the observatory, of course, since they came from Mars. Here's Dr. Shapley. I'm sure he must have received plenty of fan mail about flying saucers.
Imperfect human astronomer Harlow Shapley is credited with leveraging Cepheid Variable stars to size our Milky Way Galaxy and determine Earth's humble position in what is now known as the minor Orion Spur between the Perseus and Sagittarius Arms. In 1953, he worked out more details for a liquid water belt theory that has since evolved into the Habitable or Goldilocks Zone in the search for extraterrestrial life. As you watch his following critique of ufology, I'd like you to remember that he initially disparaged Edwin Hubble's observations supporting the claim for additional galaxies in the universe beyond the Milky Way. Many suggest he even flung the epithet junk science at Hubble. Can you find evidence of that? Fortunately, Hubble delivered solid proof to Shapley, leading him to change his view.
We humans are generally very astute in scientific researches and in technical applications. Usually we're careful and rational when we deal with things we see and facts we record, usually. However, being human, at the same time, we're often happily gullible. And when we're in that mood, we're prone to take non-science seriously. Flying saucers, for example. Now, one basic principle of scientific investigation is that before a fact can be safely deduced from a measurement, from a reading on a dial, such as this, where we record electric current, or from a mathematical computation, every time that measurement or reading must be repeated at different times in a somewhat different manner. Measures and descriptions have inescapable errors because our tools and our logic are not perfect. It is a fundamental principle that we must check our results, set up controls, have respect for the cause and effect relationship, and never neglect adverse observations. Do not throw out discordant measures. Sometimes, you see, the really important measures are those which do not agree with other measures or with some guiding theory. Then the cause of such deviation must be analyzed. The variations tell us sometimes that the methods we use are faulty. Sometimes those disparities help us to identify factors we hadn't expected to be involved. Sometimes these discordant observations have led to brilliant discoveries. They've also served at times usefully to kill many a too early theory. The basic difference between science and non-science is that objectivity permeates true scientific work. The scientist seeks true answers and cares not, while he's working as a scientist that is, he cares not whether the results are pleasant or unpleasant. As a social being, he may be happier about pleasant and fruitful discoveries. But as a scientist, he wants knowledge, regardless. A non-scientist, preoccupied with flying saucers or astrology or tea leaf fortune-telling or water witching, he too often seeks answers that fit his personal theory or desires. He's likely to doctor his measures in order to get the result desired. He's subjective, not objective. He thinks he knows the answer before he makes the experiment. Too often he'll say, I want to prove my theory. He should say, if he's to be scientific, I want to test my theory. And he should add that if the test is against my theory, then out goes that hypothesis. Well, let's look at some of the places where science is beclouded by non-science and by its offspring, superstition. As I said, we're sometimes gullible. Consider the enthusiasm to believe in these flying saucers, to believe incredible things, to ignore scientific principles, and embrace the irrational. Now, I myself have seen flying saucers, objects, that is, which pass as flying saucers. They are genuine enough as phenomena, even if not as saucers. For example, here are 6 types of phenomena that can be and have been reported with more or less astonishment as flying saucers. 6 of them. Stratospheric aircraft, weather balloons, searchlights playing on broken cloud fields, slow-moving and very infrequent meteorites, sometimes called fireballs, atmospheric mirages, and hallucinations. All of these are real and rational, even the last, hallucinations. We know their origins, no mystery about them, natural laws govern them, nothing supernatural, nothing from Mars. Let's take them up in turn. Aircraft that are reported as flying saucers include jet-driven planes and possibly experimental high-altitude missiles. Now, seen from certain angles, as it passes through clouds, that missile could be taken for a flying saucer. If the observer happens to believe in the existence of flying saucers, if he chooses to disregard the properties of reflected light or the effects of vapor trails produced by the missile engine. Another fertile source of saucer reports is the weather balloon. Here is some of the scientific equipment. The inflated balloon carries aloft instruments to record pressure, temperatures, and so on at various altitudes. With this gadget, these soaring balloons become midget broadcasting stations, transmitting their recordings to receiving stations on the Earth. The balloons are usually not recaptured once released, but drift and ascend until the pressure in the balloon causes it to burst in the less dense upper air. Seeing this balloon drifting in the sunlight, the scientific man seeks an explanation. He asks, what objects could be aloft at this time, which would provide simple and natural causes for the observation? Then, objectively, these causes are considered, sorted, evaluated. On the other hand, the non-scientific procedure grabs at the most exciting explanation and produces bizarre accounts of interplanetary visitors. Now, the best flying saucers I've seen personally looked something like this. It is, of course, the effect of a searchlight playing on broken cloud fields. These wandering spots of light with no obvious connection with the ground go through all the strange antics attributed to flying saucers. Or look at this. It's heavy. Heavy as iron. In fact, that's just what it is. It was found near this crater in Arizona. This is Meteor Crater, torn out of the earth when a meteor struck the surface and exploded centuries ago. Before it disintegrated, the meteorite, splintering and hissing, flashed through the sky. Others like it are still seen, and craters formed when they collide with the earth have been spotted in Siberia and Texas, Quebec, Australia, and elsewhere. Now, quite apart from the spectacular craters dug by meteorites, there are occasionally other effects of meteoric impact. This forest was leveled by air blasts produced by the Siberian meteorite of 50 years ago. It recorded its arrival on barometers the world over, as the instruments registered the same force which leveled the forest. You'll notice, too, the similarity between this and this. These craters of the moon, we believe, were also produced mainly by meteorites. No wonder, then, that these meteorites, moving faster than a plane through the night, incite highly emotional reactions in those who are mystery-filled and prone to believe in flying saucers.